Good afternoon, everybody. We are live on the internet, so do not swear. We are here, and I've got to bring to your attention some housekeeping matters. There is no expected fire alarm testing today, but should the fire alarm sound, please follow the fire and emergency procedures that are applicable to the councillors. I don't know how anybody who doesn't work in the councillors would know that, but I'm sure there are some signs up to tell you. But basically, there'll be people who escort you out the building. Can I ask for the webcast that you use your microphone when addressing the meeting and that it is switched off when you are not using it? And can I ask that your mobile devices are turned to silent? So I'm going to welcome two people to the meeting today. Firstly, I'd like to welcome David Haley, who's our Director of Children's Services. Hello, David. Welcome to your first Cabinet meeting. And not your first Cabinet meeting, but certainly in this role, Gary Walbridge, who's our Acting Director of Adult Services. You're both very welcome, and we'll be very gentle, I have to say. It's not a cross-examination here today. All right. So if I could move to apologies. We've received apologies from Sally Creswell. Everybody else is here by the looks of it. And Sally isn't joining us on Teams. She is actually enjoying her holiday, which is great. Declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest in respect of the items on the agenda at all? Any of them? No? Good. The minutes of the meeting of the 10th of July. Can I sign them as a true record, please? All agreed? Marvellous, thank you very much. So I move to item number 4 on the agenda. Now this month we have 2 questions from the public, just one of the many ways in which we listen to and engage with residents in Plymouth. Now I have a question from Mr. Stephen Dart. So I'm going to read that out because Mr. Dart is not here. Is the £2.75 million of council funding agreed by the Cabinet in March 2023 for the Brickfields redevelopment a one-off capital payment or an annual revenue payment? It's a very fair question. So I'm going to say, well, first, it's worth reminding ourselves about the context of this decision and the scale of the investment that is helping to unlock. And we've recently concluded these agreements. I think we did a media release about it a couple of weeks ago to say it's finally gone through. So it's a £21 million investment in Brickfields, an investment that will not only transform the Brickfields site, but will transform opportunities for the Devonport community, for sport in the city, and also our professional sports clubs. This project is a result of an amazing and long-term partnership between the Council, Plymouth Argyle, the Argyle Community Trust, Plymouth Albion, Devonport Community Leisure Limited, and existing users of the site. This deal is about massive investment in new facilities and making the most of the Brickfield site. It is clearly also a significant inward investment, in particular from Argyle, who are investing £18 million across the club and the community trust. But for me, this deal is about ambition for our communities. It's about better health outcomes for the people of Devonport, and it's also about better access to facilities for our local residents. The entire complex will be reconfigured and upgraded, creating some of the finest outdoor sports facilities in the southwest. The new community hub will deliver outcomes that residents and stakeholders have told us they want to see, including dedicated space for young people and youth service provision, education and employment programs, wellbeing services, soft play and an affordable gym. The question we received from Mr. Dart asks whether the council's funding is a one-off capital payment or an annual revenue payment. This is a one-off commitment for a maximum of 2.75 million. The majority of this is capital funding that helps to support the cost of delivering the project. Some of it will be paid to Argyle to support the costs associated with delivering the new infrastructure required at Brickfields. A significant amount of the funding has been earmarked to support the ongoing provision of hockey in the city, as well as the relocation of the Petonk rink. Petonk rink is moving to a suitable location nearby. Some of the funding will be provided to Devonport Community Leisure Limited to support their ongoing role in the community and the oversight of the Brickfields project. And there's also an allowance for ongoing maintenance of the athletics track, which, as you know, we invested in very recently as well. In fact, aside from all of the other benefits that I've already mentioned, this project will actually help the council achieve some revenue savings, and they were outlined in the original report that went to Cabinet. But also I'd like to thank Mark Coker in particular for the time he spent in the last few months getting this deal over the line. I know, Mark, you played an incredibly important brokering role between the aspirations of the project and the aspirations of the local community. So thank you for what you did. The next question is to Councillor Coker himself from Alderman George Wheeler. Do you want to do that?
Thank you, Chair. So the question from Alderman George Wheeler was, thanks for your reply to my previous question, indicating that the St Budo Square bus shelters will not be replaced imminently. Could the unused bus shelter at the top of Penrose Road, owned by Tamar Crossings, be resited to the square to help passengers over the coming winter, please? And the reply is obviously, thank you, Alderman Wheeler, for your question. It has been estimated that the suggested relocation would cost the council approximately £12,000 and take between 10 and 14 weeks to relocate the shelter, allowing for necessary conditions, utility ground and ground checks, and a possible need for a temporary traffic regulation order for which there is no budget provision. The Transforming Cities Fund St Budo Square scheme is scheduled to start in Q3 of 23-24, which would be before any temporary relocation could be undertaken. The relocation would also delay the commencement of this scheme, leading to further abortive costs. The relocation of the shelter from Penrose Road to St Budo Square is therefore not practicable or value for money, and therefore will not be taken forward. Instead, the City Council will focus on delivering the Transforming Cities Fund scheme for this area, which includes the provision of 2 brand new clear channel shelters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Coker. Next item on the agenda is Chair's urgent business. Do I have any? Thank you. So I've got some announcements, and I just a bit of a list, to be honest with you. What I'm going to do before any further ado is I know we're going to be talking about the 100 days in office thing in a minute, but I do want to talk about one of the biggest issues that Plymouth as a city is currently facing. Now, I don't want to get into any details about how we got here, because we have been over that, but I think you might be interested in what we've done since we took over the council of Armada Way. Yeah, we're going to show it in a minute. Rome wasn't built in a day, and of course Armada Way won't be either, but we are making progress. So this video is going to outline everything that we've done in our first 100 days, and I'm pleased to say that there will be some more significant progress to share in the coming weeks. We're inching closer to be able to clear up the mess that was left, and at the end of this month we will be scanning the brush and the tree stacks to make sure that any nesting birds have flown the coop. As soon as the Mardaway is clear, we'll bring forward our proposals for a new scheme to hear your views. Okay, so as I say, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. But what I wanted to do today was to reassure people that there is a lot happening, and this video will give us a little feel for that. So if you could roll the tape, or whatever it is on, and it's... There we are. So there's a lot going on, and a lot to come. So I also got a few announcements I wanted to make. Green jobs and ports. I thought we'd just have a little bit of what's gone on in relation to that. There will be more announcements coming up because, like I say, early on we are sort of making things happen. But we've begun work on our first port strategy, which will look at the economic potential of all 4 of our ports for the first time ever. In the past, we've only ever talked about them, Devonport, Millbay, Sutton Harbour and Catwater, in isolation and on an individual basis. When we look at these together, it's only then when we realise what a powerhouse we got in the ports. And the shipping world knows more than we do about what we hold here. So it'll be great to start talking about those in a really powerful way. We're going to use that strategy to identify the opportunity for us and talk a lot about green jobs and lobby the government for large-scale infrastructure investment. Decarbonising the ports is going to be really important. Port traffic and container ships are actually one of the greenest ways per tonne of moving goods around the place. And not a lot of people know that, but there's lots more we can do shoreside to help make the port even greener. I've had a number of meetings on the Celtic Array over the last month. You know that it's next door, relatively speaking, to us. There's a lot of interest nationally in terms of it. So I've met with the Pre-Port, met with our ED team and the Celtic Array contractors and consultants, and we're working on an investment prospectus. The Great Southwest have also done quite a bit on green energy in the region. But it's time for us to put our stall out about what we can actually benefit from and deliver to this opportunity. I've had a few meetings on Devonport as well, not least about the 10% social value opportunity associated with the major construction port that's in there at the moment. And while we're not going to get a great big slab of cash, what we have got is an opportunity to make some demands, I suppose, of the government, to make sure that they're good on their promise, that they're making everybody else promise, which is to have a social value element to large-scale contracts. So more to hear about that in due course. We're hosting a very important visit this week, actually. Going to meet the CEOs of both ABP and Brittany Ferry. So I'll be meeting with Christoph and Henrik, and we're going to talk about unlocking some significant investment into Mill Bay itself. And I'll be making that announcement alongside them because we know what we're going to do, but I can't tell you yet. But I will tell you this week, and it'll be absolutely fantastic. Fishing. As you know, the lock gates are being refurbished down at Sutton Harbour by the Environment Agency, and there's all sorts going on at the moment about the way in which they're going to do it, and it does have a detrimental effect on our fishing industry. And so what we've been meeting, or are going to be meeting with Sutton Harbour about, is trying to make sure that basically the small fishing boats don't scarper off somewhere else and never come back. It's as simple as that. And the methodology that Sutton Harbour and the Environment Agency might suit them, but it doesn't suit the fishing boats at the moment. So we're going to see what we can do about that. Oceans Gate Phase 3, I met with the CEO of MSUBs, Brett Fanoof, about his investment plans for Phase 3 at Oceans Gate. I'm really pleased that he's behind the security fence now doing some stuff. That's really significant, not just for him and his company, but also very significant for Oceans Gate. It'll mean that he'll be inviting more of his friends to come down behind the wire as well, which would be great. His supply chain and people who are exploring those brave new worlds. So that's a sort of flavour of some of the things that we've been up to, really. So it's pretty good. We had a visit of the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, the other day. We took her to Barden Corporation, which you remember 5 years ago was facing closure and is now massively expanding. My favourite facts about the Barden Corporation are that they have their ball bearings are in two significant places at the moment. They make them in Plymouth, and one's in missile systems in Ukraine, and the other is in the Curiosity rover on Mars. So that's quite a nice boast for them. But it was a brilliant visit, and it was. As I say, we've got a tremendous opportunity now with Barden. Sunley is the owner is doing great things, and we've basically not only saved the company, but we've helped to set them on the road to future success. Just important to know that Barden, I've got 380 employees doing high quality work up there, and 75% of what they do is exported. And as I said, I've given you two places that they do export them to, and that's fantastic. The importance of having companies of this quality in Plymouth is that, you know, it does just underlies our position as a manufacturing hub. I know a lot of people outside of Plymouth don't know just how much manufacturing we do. But I mean, you know, if you just look at what Barden are doing, working with NASA, Raytheon, Airbus, Thales, Honeywell, loads of amazingly important international manufacturers. So it's great to have them here in Plymouth. Okay, so that's my news. It's now that time when I have to ask the cabinet, have they got anything they'd like to tell us? You got anything, Jemima?
Thank you, Leader. I want to start off by talking about the box. The start of this month saw the second busiest day ever at the box, with 3,196 visitors. And during this summer holiday, we've been averaging 10,000 visitors a week, many of whom have been taking part in our fantastic family holiday activities. So I want to pass on a huge thank you to our staff and volunteers at the box. This week, as everybody will know, is the British Firework Championships, which is going to be sponsored by Brittany Ferries. One category that I'm particularly excited about is the new Young People's Choice Award. A group of care experienced young people will get to give their verdict and have been invited, obviously, for the championships. And I just think there's something really great about that, and the Lord Mayor will give that award once those young people have decided which is their winner. And I really want to pass my thanks on to Citybus, who have sponsored this particular award. And the last thing I want to talk about is a Plymouth Culture Project, which is a vending machine with a difference in Drake Circus. It's stocking plays, poems, and pin badges, which are all made by Plymouth artists. It only costs £1, and it's proved so popular that it's already been restocked 3 times since the launch less than a week ago. And if you're very lucky, you might even get a poem which I wrote, which ended up in the machine yesterday. So it's just a really quirky but really nice thing, and I'm really thrilled by how Plymouth seems to have embraced it and gone up there with their pounds. And as I say, it's been restocked 3 times already, so that's great. Thank you, Leader.
Fantastic. That's fantastic, Jemima. Thank you. Congratulations on the poem. It's not a limerick, by the way. It's in a proper poem. You know. I just want to make you sure about that, isn't it?
It's
Very good. Very good poem. So, anybody else got anything they want to talk about? Chris?
Thank you, Leader, and I will just open a different screen. I've got lots of bits on different screens for different parts of the meeting. I'd like to announce today that we are putting in place a discretionary scheme for residents in receipt of council tax support. Nearly 8,000 households will receive a one-off £25 payment towards their council tax bills. This is a direct action in terms of supporting people in the cost of living crisis, but it's not one that we're waiting till the end of 100 days to implement. The households who qualify will be council tax support customers who do not already have a passported benefit, such as universal credit. Those that have children of school age, someone who receives a disability benefit, or someone in receipt of a war pension. So in effect, other than those on disability benefits or in receipt of war pensions, the majority of those people receiving this benefit will be on low incomes. They will be some of the city's working poor who are on old legacy benefits. For those who understand the universal credit system, they'll understand that. To make it easy for people, payments will be made automatically over the next few weeks to people who have completed their council tax support forms already, and we already have all the data, so we're not asking them to apply for anything. It's just a case of we will credit your council tax support, and we will write to you to tell you that we've done that. We promised to do all that we could to help people with the cost of living, and so I'm delighted to bring this scheme forward. To some, £25 may not seem a lot of money, but to others it's quite simply the difference between eating or not eating one week. between a heated home or a cold home 1 week in the depth of winter. It's absolutely the right thing to do, and I look forward to seeing eligible residents benefit. For those who don't know, I'd just like to remind people that if you are on low incomes and you're struggling to pay your council tax, do check to see whether our council tax support scheme is able to support you. Because if it is, you could get up to 80% of your council tax covered by us. So don't struggle. If you are really struggling to pay your council tax, have a look online, or if you can't do that, get in touch with our team, because if you're entitled to council tax support, we really want you to have it. So look for it on our website, and you can follow links to it either by searching for council tax or by going to the cost of living section of the website. But I'm really pleased that today we're able to support almost 8,000 households in the city.
That's lovely. Thank you, Chris. That's really going to make a difference to some folk. Anybody got anything, Mark? What, Larry?
Yes, I'd like to talk about briefly the new George Street public realm improvements that started back in November 2021. And they've had a significant number of delays when digging that area up. They found sort of large voids, sort of blitz rubble, badly infilled chambers, and a mass of utilities and cabling, all of which needs to be redirected. But the scheme has effectively been stalled for quite some time. So we'd be pleased to know that as of today, that scheme will be starting in earnest, and the contractor is currently on site, and we will be commencing works. The first thing we'll be doing is recreating some what's called rain gardens, which are basically very large, sustainable urban drainage systems, great big pits in the ground that will be lined with materials. And when we do have heavy rainfall, that area will actually collect that rainfall and actually provide irrigation to the plants and the trees that will be planted there. There is a need to remove the hoardings that currently exist around that project, and they will be need to be moved slightly further out to enable that work to be undertaken. We have liaised with the traders specifically in that area to reassure them that we will do our very best to ensure that it does not disrupt their trading. The good news is this project is starting in earnest now, and phase one of it will be complete in early December, therefore not disrupting the busy period in relation to Christmas. So I know there's been lots of delays, and it's been very frustrating, but as you well know, the city centre is a priority for this administration, and I'm pleased to say this works will be commencing, or have commenced today, and will be complete in the next few months. And I'd just like to thank the staff for all their hard work involved in undertaking this project. I know it's been a tremendous challenge for them. And briefly, I'd also like to go on to talk about the Community Diagnostic Centre. And once again, an incredibly important project for this city. It would not have happened without the contribution of this council. We have worked very hard with our partners in the health arena to ensure this project's brought forward. We have undertaken significant works in Colin Campbell Court by purchasing buildings and demolishing buildings to enable this work to be undertaken. There has been a planning application submitted for the temporary facility that will be sited on the old Corner House pub on the corner of Market Avenue and New George Street, and that will provide a temporary CT scanner that will be in place at the end of September, and the main building will be undertaken and complete, hopefully, by the 1st of April 2025. And some really good news today, there is a cost of undertaking that work, some in the region of about £25 million. In fact, it's £24.778 million, and we have received confirmation this morning that we now have that money, so this project can go forward in earnest. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
Well, that's quite good. There ought to be a picture of you and your smiling face down. That's good. I mean, just to make a distinction, this isn't the Cavell, this is another facility altogether, a community diagnosis centre, but it will help to take some pressure off Derryford when it's in.
Just on that very point, I mean, I'll read this because there's a lot of terminology that relates to the health world, which is not my bag necessarily, but the new facility will undertake in the range of 3,000 diagnostic checks a year. No, it says it's 3,000 square metres and 280,000 checks a year. So it will relieve the pressure on Derryford Hospital substantially. And of course, we all know that Derryford struggles with even parking, but by having this facility where it is and the access to city centre car parks, it'd be much easier for people to get to this facility and to be able to park at the same time.
That's terrific news, and well done to everybody, Mark, who have got this project over the line. There's been quite a bit of back and forth over the last few weeks about where, because there was some talk about it going somewhere perhaps not as appropriate as this. So again, the team behind those discussions over the last month or so really need a slap on the back from us. And you, Mark, I know you haven't let this one go either, so thank you very much indeed for getting it over the line. That's great news. Anybody want to try and top that? Mark Coker.
I don't think, Chair, I'll be able to top that, but I think it's worth saying that after reviewing the portfolio, I announced last week that we would have a bus champion, which is going to be, or which is, Councillor Kevin Sproston. As the bus industry struggles to regain its feet after the COVID pandemic and the funding issues, I think it's really important that we have a councillor that's dedicated to be a point of contact for the bus companies, for the likes of Padan, the disability group, for bus users, so that we're able to have a loud voice. And this week, Chair, what I've also will be doing this week is announcing a walking and cycling champion, which is going to be Councillor John Stevens. Last time we were in power, we had a cycling champion or commissioner, and actually, again, a real point of contact between those users. But what I'd also like to say is we've just heard that Plymouth City Council, in partnership with the Plymouth School Sports Partnership and our active travel team, have just been released by the Bikeability Trust that Plymouth was the top performing local authority in the country for training year 6 pupils in the city. 85% of our year 6 pupils have been trained on bike safety and journeys. And I think we really need to pay credit to the Plymouth Schools Partnership and also our active travel. You know, we achieved by far 85%. There was only 3 other authorities out of the whole country that got into the 80s. And I think by encouraging and promoting a walking and cycling champion, you can see the joined up approach to delivery. And I also must pay credit to Jonathan Toot as part of the council's active social prescribing team in Plymouth that's actually delivering adult cycle safety training. So it's really pleasing to see that all the work that we've done over the past few years is actually rewarding us with recognition. So I think that's mine. It's not going to top the centre, but I think actually on the way forward, it really shows that Plymouth is moving in the right direction, Chair.
I see what you did there. But that is really amazing, that number, isn't it? I mean, we ought to be really celebrating that. I mean, you know, you hear a lot about active travel all over the place in terms of networks, but actually, I really think we ought to write an article for local government magazine saying how we've done that. I mean, I think a lot of councils got a lot to learn from us, and this is one of those occasions where we ought to try and do that. So, I don't know. We'll get that done
I can
through the
arrange that,
comms
Chair.
team.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. Brilliant work, brilliant work. Okay, no pressure. Anybody got anything? Sally?
I've got 2 bits, Chair, if that's okay. So I just want to give a little bit update from the library service. So our summer reading challenge, during 6 weeks of summer school holidays last year, 3,1800 children registered for summer reading challenge. As from 10 a.m. on Thursday the 10th of August this year, 3,358 children have registered for Summer Reading Challenge. This represents so far 11.3% increase, and I am being told there's probably higher figures, but they just couldn't get me to them. What I would like to say is, you know, fantastic to all the young children who took part, and I'm sure they'll all be looking forward to receiving their certificate when they go back to school. But more so to all the librarian staff that help this to happen, and they wouldn't be able to achieve this without the fantastic work of all the volunteers. So that's my first bit. I'm really pleased to say that we have signed a special charter to tackle antisocial behaviour and crime. The Community Safety Charter is a scheme which sits under the Neighbourhood Watch banner. The aim is to involve a wide range of local organisations, charities, businesses and groups in crime prevention. As a council, we will pledge to continue to promote culture that does not tolerate antisocial behaviour, harassment, intimidation, hostile towards others. Enable others to identify and take an active stance against these crimes and incidents. Actively encourage and support those who experience or witness these crimes and incidents to report them to the relevant authorities. And support those affected and signpost those who need further support to agencies who can help them. I also would like just to say as well, Councillor Coker was very helpful in getting the city bus, the first bus company, to actually put their posters up as well, which we both took part on. So, you know, a big thank you to City Bus for helping promote this. And as a local authority, we'll be asking other businesses and charities to take part as well. So, thank you, Chair.
Terrific news. Thank you very much, Sally. Anybody got anything? Anybody else? Sudan, did you stick your hand up there?
I think there's a bit of a theme going on here, Leader.
Go on.
You know, we talked about the cost of living plan, didn't we? And the amount of things that you can do across the city. So Jemima's already talked about all the visits to the box. You've talked about all the increased visits to the libraries. So I'm going to talk about the sports bit now. So we've run Fit and Fed over the last few years. I haven't got the up-to-date figures because I am going to Tot Hill Park tomorrow and Victoria Park next week. Check my diary, Jemima. And but I just wanted to say, you know, to offer 24,000 different sessions and taster sessions to young children and families across the city is what we're aiming to do. And so far, the take-up has been remarkable. It is aimed at, you know, people who might have looked after children, or they might have children eligible for free school meals, for young carers, for refugees and asylum seekers. So we are aiming it at families who may need that little bit of additional support. But just to give you an example of the difference it makes, Plymouth Active Leisure are part of providing some of these sessions. And in the first couple of weeks of the holidays, they actually have had 4,427 young people attend swimming lessons, gym floor lessons. They've been to Mount Wise, they've been to Tyneside, they've been to Plymouth, Plimpton swimming pool, they've been to Central Park. it is just amazing that we are able to support these people right across the city. So the up-to-date figures will be in September, but it's just to remind people that we're only halfway through the school holidays and there's still lots of sessions that people can access. You talked earlier about brickfields, but I just wanted to talk about brickfields in terms of a bit more of a practical thing for the people who are actually using it. So on the 20th of July, we had a community day, which Councillor Coker and I and the other local councillors attended, because we want to make sure that as we move forward with brickfields, that we really do connect and engage with the local community. But it's also about making sure that the people who are currently using the facility have got classes and things that they can move on to. So I really wanted to say that from September the 1st, Brickfields, as it is now, under Plymouth Active Leisure, will close, and it's going to close for customers as well, while Argyle Community Trust take it over and refurb it. But I want to give people the reassurance that we're trying to find alternative provision and trying to do it locally. So one of the things that they are going to do, for instance, is use a marquee so that some of the local classes can still be continued. And this not only offers the ability for people to attend those classes, but also it keeps the leisure coaches and the tutors absolutely fully employed as well, because we're trying to look after the people who use and the people who deliver the classes. And I think it's important to say, I'm not going to go on to say what a fantastic opportunity is, because you've already said that, but it is a major investment in a very deprived area of the city, which is not only going to benefit all the local people, but lots of people who are active in excellence in sports as well. So those are my announcements. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Sue. Can I just check? It was 24,000 different sort of activities you said. Was that right? Go on.
It will be 24,066.
24,066. And are they all free, or are there some of them charged?
Most of them are free. There are a few, so like some of the things that Plymouth Active Leisure do, for instance, like swim for £1.
Yeah.
But most of them, I would say, of those, probably 23,500 are free.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm sure that's been really helpful to people in this miserable wet summer that we've had, to be honest. So hopefully for the rest of the holiday it'll get a bit better. Tom, do you have anything?
I do. Thank you, Leader. I've got a couple of announcements from both ends of my portfolio. So parks under the environment and renewable energy under climate change. At the end of July, I'm very pleased to announce that 8 parks in Plymouth were awarded the prestigious Green Flag Award for their high standard of quality and cleanliness. This would not have been possible without the hard work of council staff, but also the dedicated volunteers and friends groups up and down and across the city who go above and beyond, volunteering their time to look after our green spaces. So I'd like to give a huge thank you to everyone involved in those green spaces. Soon after, the council celebrated Love Parks Week. We supported communities to run a range of free events, tying in with what's been mentioned already today. Our online promotion reached over 60,000 people, and they were given the opportunity to enter a competition by telling us all about their favourite local parks. It was really nice to see some of the photos and stories being shared by the communications team during that period. Also in the north of the city, upgrades to Patterson Drive Playground in Maidstone are now complete. There's been a huge focus on inclusivity of all abilities, and we're also teaming up now with the probation team, artists and local families to create nature-based murals, which I'm sure will be very popular with the communities up there. Moving on to the climate change part of this, as part of our solar rooftops project, we've completed 7 of our 8 projects at Prince Rock Depot, Chelson Meadow MRF, Ballard House, the Council House, the Box, Crown Hall Court and Prince Rock Admin Block. You might remember, Leader, that Plymouth Labour promised to deliver solar panels on city centre rooftops, and we're already delivering on that pledge. The 8th project, installing panels on the top deck of the Theatre Royal car park, has just started. To date, we've installed over 2,200 solar panels, reducing our carbon emissions by an estimated 198 tonnes per year. Our heat decarbonisation programme is also progressing well. roof and basement installation. And again, I'm going to list a few different locations here. Ballard House have been completed, but we've also got new heat pumps up and running at 4 sites at Crown Hill Court, Elliott Terrace, the Prince Rock Admin Block and Pool Farm. A further 4 sites for heat pumps are in the design stage, and I look forward to providing further updates on their progress in the near future. To conclude, shifting how we heat and power our buildings, replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy is a key priority for us in how we will reduce the council's emissions. Thank you.
Well, that's, again, that's an amazing amount of work, and that's really good news about the solar panels. I'm sure people have no idea that we've been that busy in that area. That's fantastic. Mark?
I just want to come in on almost the last comment that was just made in respect to the Theatre Road car park sort of schemes. I can assure you that the provision has been made in the capital programme, but until we vote on that in this coming meeting, we can't actually commence it, but I'm sure Tom will actually vote in favour of that scheme. But I can assure him it's in the capital programme. We just need to wait a couple of minutes before we start, all right?
That's terrific. Now, I know I'm not going to ask you, Mary, right, because, you know, you've got stuff in train, all right? Have you got anything you'd like to just let us have?
The main thing I'd like to say a big thank you to Whitley Primary School. They invited me along to be groomed and questioned by the year six about the dental task force and what we were hoping to achieve with it. And I've got to say those youngsters were absolutely marvellous. They really were. Every question asked, they had decided themselves. And they're worse than council, leader. They are absolutely worse than council. So I think we've got some councillors in the making with that. So they were really enthused. And of course, now they're going on to secondary schools now, but year 5 have been tutored in and it will carry on that good work. But their questioning was wonderful. They really had a handle on the whole thing. So a big thank you to them for that morning.
Thank you very much indeed. It's probably all that cycling that they've been doing. But you'll be reporting back next time, I think, on progress on Dental Task Force and probably on Aging Well as well.
We've got another Dental Task Force meeting on the 15th of September, and certainly the next thing to be making headway with is the Aging Well, yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that was quite a lot, wasn't it? You know, it's kind of opportunity once a month for us to catch up and realise just how busy the council has been, because there's a hell of a lot going on. It's incredible. Speaking of which, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda now, which is it's titled 100 Days of Action. We said that we would hit the ground running when we were elected in May, and that's exactly what we've done. I think it's fair to say that we've brought a new energy and urgency to addressing key issues that we know Plymouth residents are concerned about, including help with the cost of living crisis that's affecting so many people. We've referenced it today and we will again, as well as we've said, resorting at Armada Way in the city centre. We've kick-started stall developments and regeneration schemes, bringing key organisations and people together to tackle critical issues such as the lack of access to NHS dentists, as we said. And, you know, what a lot of the time we've spent in the last 100 days has been about putting the groundwork in. However, that being said, there's still a lot above the surface, which we'd like to share today. So I'm going to ask Jemima if she'd take it from here.
Thank you, Leader. Technically to today, it's actually been 87 days, but unfortunately we couldn't quite arrange Cabinet to be on the 100th day. And I think it's great to take this opportunity to reflect and celebrate what we've achieved, already, and I think it's right we do that. And I'm really proud to be part of a really committed and hard-working cabinet who want to get on and get things done and are doing that in spades. And I think we'll all probably individually reflect in a minute about a couple of things in this first 100 days that we're most proud of. But we've made a video. It's only some of what we've done because we couldn't fit all of what we've done into 2 minutes. But if we watch the video, and then we can all, if we want to, just talk about a couple of the things that we're most pleased about achieving so far. So yeah, run VT, whatever it is they say.
Run VT, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I think that video is I think it's really inspiring. And actually, we did promise people in May that we were absolutely committed to building a better Plymouth, and we really are doing that. And the couple of things that I wanted to highlight were the opening of the 4 family hubs. It was part of our corporate plan. It is part of our corporate plan. We're stating, we want Plymouth to be the best place to grow up in. And these family hubs, of which there are more to come over the next few years, are going to be a really big part of making that happen. So that was on day 14. I went to those. And then I've got to go to page 10. On day 40, Tudor and I visited a disused building which had been transformed into self-contained flats for some of our care experienced young people who are ready to live more independently. It's really important to have this kind of accommodation for our young people in the city. It's absolutely beautiful. They're going to start moving in there next month, and I'm really excited about it, and really excited for them and what it means for them as they begin their journey to independence. So those are the 2 things that I particularly wanted to highlight. There are lots of other things I could talk about, but I don't know who would like to come in and talk about what they're most pleased about in their first 100 days.
Any volunteers?
Any volunteers? Councillor Coker.
I think there's 2 things that I think stand out. One is of a personal nature. We, as you know, I campaigned long and hard to keep Mount Wise swimming pools free. And actually going down there every week and talking to the people that are using them down there, it was the best and the right thing to do. And I think, you know, in the financial times, it's really important that we do everything we can to make sure that families, not only from Devonport, because that pool is used from families and people all over the city, and it was the right thing to do. And actually seeing the faces of people using it really is a pleasure to go down there. Just on the second thing, we said we would fill more road defects this year than last year. I've only got the figures up till the 6th of August, so I'm a few days behind. But as of the 6th of August, in our 80 odd days, we've filled 4,150 road defects around the city. So we're well on our way. And I think, you know, that when you consider that for the last 2 years, 5,000 odd defects were filled during the city, to actually be able to say that we've done over 4,000 in the first 80 days, is, I think, a promise we're delivering on, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight the purple flag. The purple flag is accreditation for its evening and nighttime economy. And it's about keeping our evening and nighttime safe in the city, where people can go out and enjoy themselves. That was done on day 20. On day 46, we had, it was National Campaign to Tackle Antisocial Behaviour Week in Plymouth. And instead of asking residents to come to us, we went to residents. And, you know, I'd like to thank, you know, all agencies like Devon and Cornwall Police, Housing Association, everybody who went out to areas and made it so much easier for people to be able to express their concerns. But to end all that, I would say we're really lucky to live in a relative safe city where antisocial behaviour is you know, we take it very serious for our people. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. From the report, I'd just like to pick up a couple of interlinked things, and then I just want to talk about something that's not in the report. But on day 22, PwC talked about good growth and talked about the things that actually we did last time we were in administration. You've already talked about lags between doing things and them happening. But it was really important to be reminded that the work that we as a council have done in supporting businesses to think about their employment practices, their procurement practices, the work that we've done to buy local, make a difference to our local economy and make a difference to us as a city. And it's why a couple of weeks later, on day 49, I think it is, I was really pleased to be able, yes, day 49, how's that from memory, to be able to talk about relaunching the development of our cooperative development strategy, which we'll be doing over the next year. The underpinning of how we make sure that we get good economy working through the way Plymouth works. And I've been really pleased to visit one of our new food co-ops last week. There's a lot of good work going on, and we're going to be building on that. But it's good to see some of those indicators flagged, and that stuff that we did before that's coming in. And I just wanted to talk about something that was one of our top 5 pledges that isn't really showing in here yet. And that's because the housing crisis is a massive crisis, and there is lead-in time to it. And I wanted to reassure people that we are taking this really seriously. Tracy and I are co-chairing a housing task force which brings together key people from all parts of the council, and we are looking at everything with Mark Lowry, we're doing deep dives into the homelessness situation, looking at how we can support bringing forward more temp accommodation, which means we rely less on bed and breakfast and give people better outcomes. But these are things that we haven't caused here as a city. And during the first 100 days, the BBC chose Plymouth as a case study for what's happening nationally on homelessness. Families no longer able to afford the rent, even though they're working. The impact of evictions, no-fault evictions, and the impact of low housing allowances on the LHA. We will continue to do what we can for Plymouth. I think we've got some really good stuff starting, and I'm looking forward to announcing it after our first 100 days. But we are fighting a government who is causing a housing crisis here in Plymouth. And we're going to do our best for the people of Plymouth. And I look forward to coming forward with solutions that will be better for the people of Plymouth and actually better for our budgets too. But it's not there yet because we have lead-in times. And I think it's important when we celebrate the final press releases that we also remember in so many of our areas, we've got things that take time to come through, and to reassure people that if it's in a top 5 pledge, we're certainly working our hardest to make sure that we deliver on it.
It's quite hard just to pick one thing when you look through this document and see quite how much has been done in nearly 100 days. And, you know, I could quite happily talk about any one of the renewable energy schemes that I mentioned earlier in the announcement. But the thing that I wanted to mention was the UK 100 commitment, because that for me speaks to the core of one of the priorities this administration is trying to achieve, which is completely rethinking putting carbon reduction at the heart of our priorities. And when you think about the way in which the government's dragging its feet towards a 2050 goal, and that was us very early on, day 32, recommitting to 2030, and in a lot of our conversations, not just within the silo of the climate change brief, but whether it's Mark Coker talking about sustainable transport, or Chris Pemberthy with Eco Homes, or yourself, Leader, looking at green jobs and skills. It's been very exciting to be part of that team, making sure that's at the core of everything that we do.
Everybody's happy. Yeah, I think I'd like you to do that. Would you like to sum up, Jemima?
I want to say that none of this happens by accident. And as I said when I was introducing it, I'm really proud to be part of this really hard-working, committed cabinet who really are here every day, working extremely hard, as are our council officers and our council teams, to make this happen. You know, we all hear it on the doorstep when we're knocking on doors. Oh, what's the point of you? What do you do? Well, actually, that's why we want to put this stuff together. You know, we're accountable to the people of Plymouth, and we want to tell them what we've been doing since they put their faith in us in May. And I hope they'll be pleased to see things in there that were their priorities, that they told us were their priorities. And this is only the beginning. This is the start, and we will continue to work hard for all of our residents in Plymouth every day, and hopefully keep coming back to Cabinet to update them, to tell them what we've done. You know, we are in difficult times. We're going to hear in a bit from Councillor Dan about the cost of living, but we are all absolutely committed to what we have said in our corporate plan, to making this city to be the best place to grow up and to grow old. Thank you, Leader.
Lovely. I've just got one thing to ask. Does the Cabinet agree to note this report? All those in favour? Thank you. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks, Jemima. So we move on to item 9 now, which is a verbal update from Councillor Dan and Dr. Ruth Harrell about the cost of living plan.
So I can see Ruth over there, and she's probably thinking, what is Councillor Dan going to be saying? Because Ruth's been on holiday. So this is a nice link between the sort of the 100 days plan and to where we are today. Because on day 71, we had a cost of living workshop. And I've just worked it out. On day 96, which is next Wednesday, we'll actually be launching and letting people know what's in the plan. But it isn't a plan that has been static. Leader, when we took control of the council, you made it very clear that we wanted to do what we could for people across the city to help them through a cost of living crisis which isn't going to last days or months. It's going to last years before people come out the other side. We've been doing some work with the Citizens Advice Bureau to try and articulate just what that means for residents in Plymouth. And we know that nearly half of people nationally are really worried about their income. But because in Plymouth we are a low income city in comparison to other cities, it's 66% of Plymouth people are worried about how they're going to cope, how they're going to make their money spread. Now, we don't have a magic wand here. We can't go around giving people lots of money. But what we can do is make sure we put in place the support that is needed for people during these following weeks and months. So when I was on holiday on the 12th of June, when we set up the remit for what the cost of living plan was going to be, we said that we wanted it to work with partners. We said we wanted to make sure that it was a multi-agency approach, so that people right across the city were going to support people in the city to come together to make sure they can get help and advice. We said a lot of the things we needed to do was about communication and how we were going to share and signpost. We also said that we know that there's a group of people across the city that perhaps don't always get what they're entitled to, in terms of perhaps children with free school meals or people on universal credit. And because this time 60% of the people affected are going to be working, they're going to be low income families, they're going to be families who and households who may not necessarily in the past know how to get help. So it's how do we reach those people and let them know that there's no stigma about this. You need help. There will be somebody in the city who will be able to help you. And also, you know, this is not just happening in Plymouth, it's a national thing. And we also know that we probably need to do some lobbying of national government to make sure that they put in place some of the things that we can have and have tools in our toolbox to support people. So the challenge was to do it in 100 days. So you might be thinking, well, why am I talking about it today and not launching the plan until next week? The reason is, following the workshop, there was a lot of ideas and inspirational innovations that came forward that need putting together. We've already started. I mean, I would like to show people the new up-to-date revamped website, which is already up and running, which means that people can be signposted to help much, much quicker. But also we need to make sure that when we do go out and communicate a message, we're doing it and it's meaningful. So we decided that the middle of next week, which is a couple of weeks before the schools go back, is the time to launch the plan with our first communication wave, which is going to be aimed at households and families with children or people or young people who are in education, so that when they go back to school or college, that they're going to get all the support that they need in that first wave. And then we'll be following it with food support, heating support, housing support, because you can't do everything all at once. And you have to make sure that when you do communicate help, people are willing to listen. There are 5 different themes in the plan. The first one is offers. I know we've got the health report coming up later, but we do know, and we know from COVID, that when people haven't got any money or they're stuck in their houses, it's not good for their health and mental health, which is why earlier today we've talked about the free things that have gone on across the city. So we haven't waited for that. That has been going on already for the last 6 weeks. I said we haven't got a magic wand. We can't give you lots of money, but we can help support people, perhaps make their money go further or prioritise how their money is spent. And then if they haven't got enough money, the next layer then is crisis support. What can we do to support you with your housing, with your food, with your heating? And then I talked about asks of government. But the cost of living plan isn't suddenly going to end. It's because we're going to then move it on then about how we tackle poverty more generally across the city, because we know that this is going to be a growing issue. I mean, you heard Councillor Pembo earlier talking about the increased number of people in housing crisis and homelessness. This is not going to stop. So the reason we're doing it next week is A, to make sure that we've got a really, really good basis to start with, and we've got the collaborative work that we need and we're ready to go, but also so we get the messaging right. So I don't want people thinking out there, this is just all empty words, because it's not. And I thought I'd just hold up my lovely, lovely little leaflet, because I've talked about the website, but this is already now, should be in libraries and public places. It's been used in the Fit and Fed, it's been used in events across the city. It's been out for the last couple of weeks. It's a very, very simple leaflet which just said, are you worried, on the front, and it's got the website address, and I'm sorry it's all web-based, but that's the only way we can do it at the moment. And then on the back, it's got a list of all the areas that if you go onto the website, we can signpost people to. Financial help, energy costs, food costs, help for families, housing costs, employment and skill support, mental health support, and then finally when we get into the winter, warm welcoming spaces. So this is not an empty plan, it's an absolutely dynamic, active plan that we will keep going when we've launched it next week. And Ruth, have you got anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you very much, Councillor Dan. I think you've summarised it all, and as you say, real concerns around how the cost of living will impact on people and how that impacts on their health and well-being. So everything we can do, we will be trying to do. And the consultation event that we held a couple of weeks ago was so well attended, and there was such a richness of information in there on how we can contact people and how we can communicate with them. That really, that was a fantastic event and has really helped us going forward.
That's terrific. So we look forward to next week when you come out of the traps, all guns blazing on this, which is fantastic. Any questions at all to Ruth or to Sue on what you've heard today, or perhaps we'll save the questions for next week? Mark, you've got one.
It's not so much a question, it's an observation that will perhaps come out later in the report that I deliver around the financial monitoring. The cost of pressure that people are experiencing, unsurprisingly, provides us with a pressure. And those people that are experiencing those difficulties end up looking to the council, rightly so, for more support. So in the report that I deliver later, we will see there's some clear connections between the pressures those people are experiencing and how they would impact upon our budgets going forward, and we need to make provisions for them as well. So the two are very much interlinked.
That's absolutely right. Okay, well, thank you for your verbal update, and presumably the next meeting of the Cabinet, we'll get a bit of a report back from you on how the launch went and whether there's any stats coming through early on.
Yeah, and there'll be a full communications plan attached so that people will know when things are coming out. But also, it will be about feeding back what we get from the communities as well, because this is definitely a two-way plan. We can't always assume that we know the answers to the issues. And as we found out from the workshop, there are people out there who can help support people across the city that are not necessarily council-based. Yeah. And that's really important. It was just really enlightening to see how many people care about people in Plymouth.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you very much for that, Sue, and thank you, Ruth, for 2 minutes, because you'll be back on in a second. Because we're going to move on to item number 10, which is the annual Director of Public Health report. And Ruth is there ready to take us through it. So you have to do this, not because you want to, but because you have to. No, it is because you want to as well. I know that. It's all right. So we're looking forward to hearing what you got to say, Ruth. Over to you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So the full report, as you know, is in the pack, and I have done a few slides, if that's okay, to just articulate some of the points, but not all of them. I won't take you through all of them, I promise. So right. So as you say, this is a report where it's an opportunity to have a little bit of a review of how things are going in the world of public health, and for the population of Plymouth. So within the report that you'll see, I've covered a range of topics, and there are some more detailed appendices that are available on our website if anybody wanted to look at those. But obviously, I haven't included everything in the pack, because that would be quite a long read. So as you'll be very well aware, in the looking at health and well-being of people, we actually have to look at everything around the conditions that people live in. And this little diagram here summarises that quite well. So you have the person at the heart of it, and obviously things like age, inherited factors, all those sorts of things have an impact. But then we have things like our lifestyle, the community that we have around us, the local economy that we live in, how safe we are in our activities, whether there's good jobs, whether we can shop and afford to buy things, the places that we live in, and the natural environment around us. So that wide range of things are so important to us. And of course, what I've tried to show here is that all of these factors are things that are covered in the Plymouth Plan. And Thrive Plymouth, of course, focuses particularly around the lifestyle, and those lifestyle factors that we know impact health and well-being. But the Plymouth Plan as a whole is really sets out the fact that we do want to help people to have healthy and long lives as well. We also have to note that there are many external factors that influence on these, and clearly a global pandemic being one of the rather large ones that's on our minds. But also things like economic downturn, cost of living crisis, those sorts of things have a big impact on the people living in our city, as we were just talking about. And those national policies around welfare, around the economy, all of those sorts of things have an impact as well, as you can see through that diagram. So not everything that happens to people is within something that we can control locally, but obviously, as has just been described with cost of living, we can do our absolute best to support people. So this graph is for England. Sorry, it's for UK life expectancy. And it shows the scale on the bottom is time from 1980 through to 2018 to 2020, which is the most recent data that's been published officially. And so I'm sticking with official data for this. And the male life expectancy is always lower than females. You can see the gap there. And in this green period, you can see that life expectancy for males and females was increasing. As we enter this blue period, you can see that there was a change, and somewhere around, this is about 2010, somewhere around 2010, we started to see quite a flattening of life expectancy. So it was still increasing, but it wasn't increasing as much as we might have expected. And actually, part of that reason was that life expectancy for people in the more deprived areas was slowing down more quickly. Slowing down more quickly doesn't make much sense. It was the improvements were much less than they were for wealthier people. And then, of course, we hit the pandemic as well. And that little bit here, you've only really got one proper data point for that, but you can see there was a downturn in life expectancy that we could see and that we could measure. And obviously, we understand the reasons in this area very well, because the pandemic created a lot of deaths through COVID, through pneumonia, and other associated conditions. But in this blue area, there's been lots of work done to try to understand that. And it is thought that national policies were a key factor there, with the impact of austerity on the population. So that's where we were, and we can see that the pandemic caused a dip. There's a question now about, well, where are we? We're now through the worst of the pandemic by a long way. We're now into a sort of living with COVID point. I'm sorry, this is a slightly complicated curve, but if you look at this this curve at the top, this green curve, basically the light green, where it's above this line, is showing more deaths than we might expect per week. And this starts over in the start of the pandemic, March 2020, and it goes on towards, I think this This is data that ended in June of this year, so it's quite recent. And you can see that actually, even though we're no longer, thank goodness, we're no longer getting these large peaks in excess deaths that were caused by COVID, we are still seeing more deaths than we would like to see. So if this was all at the average, it would all be, there'd be nothing to see, it would all be on a flat line. But you can see that most of them are above this line, most of them are excess deaths, and there's been very few weeks where we've seen fewer deaths than we might expect. So that serves to say we're not out of the crisis at the moment, unfortunately. We're still seeing more deaths than we should be seeing now. So much fewer of them are due to actual pneumonia caused by COVID and the immediate effects of COVID. And of course, there's lots of conversations and lots of research going on about what is causing us to have an excess death even now. And as I say, some of that is direct impacts of COVID, but we're also seeing quite a lot of excess deaths around particularly diseases that impact the heart and the circulatory system. Some of that is potentially linked to previous infections with COVID because you do have increased risks for some time, but also there are also, of course, impacts of concerns around, the lack of healthcare that people received in the middle of the pandemic for those more routine conditions and perhaps for identifying risk factors. And there's also a correlation with increased death rates and things like delays in getting urgent care, which we know is obviously a big concern. So we're not out of the woods in terms of returning to seeing a positive impact on health and well-being, unfortunately. So there's more to go. So just to look more detailed about Plymouth, because that's obviously what we're particularly concerned about. So Plymouth life expectancy, this is the current best value that we've got for Plymouth compared to England. And I've also compared it to geographically similar locations. So these are locations where they've got similar demographics, similar levels of deprivation and poverty, and similar age of the population. And although we're still below England, the gap between England and Plymouth is about 0.6 for both females and for males. We do actually have the longest life expectancy, marginally, but it is still the longest life expectancy compared to those similar areas. So it's quite a positive picture with respect to our statistical comparators, but obviously more work to do to get up to the rates of England. And that gap between us and England has narrowed slightly for males, so that is positive as well. It's also worth highlighting one of our key areas to look at is inequality. And this graph, again, these two curves show inequality. So that's the difference between the gap in life expectancy for the wealthiest and the least wealthy within any population. And this is particularly the black curve is for England as a whole, and this curve here is for Plymouth. So in this case, you can see that for females and for males, our life expectancy gap, our inequality is a little better than England. We have a bit less inequality in Plymouth. It is significantly less for females and similar but slightly less for males. So given that one of our targets is to reduce inequality, that is a positive finding at the moment for Plymouth. Another parameter that we look at quite a lot is healthy life expectancy. So it's one thing to live a long life. What we're also interested is whether people are living a healthy life and how long they enjoy good health for. And this figure gives us an idea of when our population, on average, might start to see poorer health and to have health where they don't feel that they're in good health anymore. And there's lots of factors that go into this calculation. But if I first of all just show you the right-hand side, this is for males, and you can see that over time, and this starts at 2009, over time, the male's healthy life expectancy in Plymouth, which is this curve here, has actually increased. So we were significantly below the England level until the last couple of years, where we've started to be about the same, and in fact slightly above in the most recent data, the 2018 to 2020 data. So that's actually really positive. So there's something really good happening for our male healthy life expectancy in the city. Unfortunately for females, we haven't managed to break that barrier, and we are still seeing that the healthy life expectancy has stayed pretty low and has stayed lower than England. And that is an area that we are obviously we're obviously concerned about. So it's really positive that the male has increased, but still very concerned that the female hasn't. Now, it's quite difficult to find the answers to why that has happened and what might have impacted on males that hasn't impacted on females. But we are trying to look into that and look into far more detail. There's no really obvious clues. There's no obvious health condition that's causing this. There's no key risk factor that's causing this. We think it's far more complicated, and we probably have to look right back to that first diagram where we looked at all those wider determinants of health and their impact on people's lives. But we are looking at that now. So obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, Thrive Plymouth was launched in 2014 as our 10-year programme to tackle health inequalities through promoting healthier lifestyles. And we knew then, and we still know now, that things like not smoking, only drinking in moderation, eating healthily, and being physically active are all really good for our health, and they can influence our health in positive ways. We know that well-being is really important to help people to do that. It's really difficult to stay being healthy and making those healthier, taking those healthier actions if your well-being is suffering. And of course, that then is a really strong link into things like cost of living crisis and how that impacts on people's well-being. So we had an annual focus, of course, with Thrive Plymouth. And unfortunately, of course, we had to pause a little bit on what we did through COVID. And you can see on this slide, it covers the different areas that we had an annual launch of. And each launch brought us more partners and a wider focus to Thrive Plymouth. And each one grew. So every year we grew. And we did see some of the really amazing work that was done through COVID by all of our partners in Thrive Plymouth, because this is such a citywide programme now that so many people have been engaged with and involved in. And as Thrive Plymouth has evolved over the last sort of 9 years, because we are now rapidly approaching the start of the 10th year, and it was a 10-year programme initially, we've really recognised that the language of behaviours and lifestyle is not really about the word choice, because choices are incredibly weighted, much more so than perhaps was realised when this programme first started. People don't have unlimited choices. In fact, some people have barely any choices, and the choices they make are so constrained by their situation that actually they may be making the best choice for them in their particular situation at that point in time, but it might not be the healthiest in the long run. And so we know that that's not the best word to use when we're looking at this. Mental health and well-being has become a really central pillar of Thrive Plymouth, and understanding the role that it plays and how we can lead healthier lives, but also how we can be resilient to the challenges that we have that get thrown at us in our life. And we've also really recognised the impact of trauma, of course. And there's been a large programme recently to really work with people to understand their situation, using appreciative inquiry to understand what is working well for people, what is good for them, what's positive in their lives, and to use that to then understand what we can do to support them more and better, working with our communities. So I think we've done a great deal around Thrive Plymouth, and as we are now getting close to what would have been the start of the 10th year of a 10-year programme, one of my recommendations and my asks of you is to ask me to bring to you a report with a suggested pathway for Thrive Plymouth going forward. And I have to say that my recommendation at this point would be that we should be continuing with Thrive Plymouth. This wasn't a programme to do for 10 years and then stop. This is a programme that we have gained a lot of momentum, a lot of learning, and a lot of work across Plymouth that I believe, would want to continue. And I really welcome the opportunity to talk to you further about that as a cabinet. So finally, just to sum up, and thank you very much for your time, but just to sum up, so life expectancy in Plymouth is lower than England, but it does compare well to similar areas with similar population and similar levels of deprivation. Our inequality levels are a little lower than England for female and about the same for males. So that is positive. We're seeing some positive things there. And we do have more work to do on female healthy life expectancy. We don't just want people to be living long lives, we want them to be living healthier lives for longer as well. I also believe that an ongoing programme for Thrive Plymouth will support this, but whenever we do look at this information, this data, we do have to remember that the national and the global context is really important. And we've had a stark lesson in that with the pandemic and now with the cost of living crisis. We thank you very much for your time. I will end the presentation, I hope, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Ruth. Before I do bring others in, if I could ask Mary whether there was anything that she wanted to say and add to this. Sorry, I should have brought you in earlier, Mary.
That's all right, leader. I mean, I really want to say a big thank you to the whole department for the work that they've done on this. You know, it takes a lot of time to pull all this information together, and it's always, you know, you and I have been around for a long time having Director of Public Health reports, and it's always staggering to hear some of the facts and figures within these. So it's really heartening to see that gap getting less and less between one end of the city and the other. But we shouldn't take our eye off the ball, because that one particular thing of women's health before they have more ill health, that's got to be something that challenges all of us to find out why and what's going on. COVID made a lot of difference to the health of men and women in the city, and there are many ongoing consequences of COVID. Long COVID is one of those things that is still dragging on and causing concerns. And as Ruth said, circulatory systems, cardiac systems are all suffering, and lungs are all suffering because of this. So it is even more important to me, leader, that we do bring Thrive back and examine what we're going to do for the next 5 years at least. So that to me is one of those important things. We can't let things slide as far as that's concerned. So a big thank you, as I say, to Ruth, and I look forward to working with the team to see if we can get any of those little conundrums that we can't quite unpick now, whether over the next 6 months we can get any further answers will be really interesting. And Ruth, and you've probably read this weekend that they're now saying we don't have to quite do so many steps per day. And I think that'll be quite interesting to come into, because it's certainly from my perspective as somebody with a mobility problem, actually now they're saying you need to do less. That actually reassures me, because I think I can achieve some of those, whereas I could never have got to 20,000 steps or 10,000 steps a day. So that to me is quite heartening for people with mobility issues. So I look forward to working together to improve the health of the city.
Thank you, Mary. Well, if it is true that we have to do less steps a day, that'll save me pacing around the office a lot more. But maybe other reasons for that. So thanks for that. So we've got a game of 2 hours here. We've got the request to bring back a revised Thrive, and then we've also got obviously the note in the contents of your report. There's something for me, Ruth, about it's really worrying that on the one hand we've got people living longer, but actually for women they're living longer and healthier lives in Plymouth. We really do need to get to the bottom of that. If it's something to do, I mean, it clearly will have something to do with the Ageing Well agenda, of course it will, but it could, the seeds of that could be further back in terms of employment, the kinds of employment, right at work. There's a number of facets and factors in play here that we probably need to get to the bottom of. So it's that thing again about the good growth, right? It all kind of links together in a way, and I think we do need some work done. I think in terms of access to employment in Plymouth, we know there's a lot of people who are struggling at the moment, and they're working 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, on top of everything else, and on top of trying to get childcare and all the rest of it. So we really do need to do some work in this area, and I think we'll ask economic development team to get into this area, as well as the usual members of staff that examine these issues, because I think there's some interventions we can make to help in this respect, I think. Has anybody got any questions for Ruth? Chris?
I think it was a reflection, just thinking we've been talking a lot about cost of living and the need to just not react to the immediate, but also to tackle some of the root causes in poverty. One of the things that the cross-party cabinet advisory group on child poverty has talked about for a number of years now is the need to tackle, especially for women, skills development, and the importance of women's financial contribution to the home, and what that means for bringing up children now, but the models that that gives their children for the future. And I think, Leader, as you ask economic development to do that, we need to feed that thinking back into other parts of the council, because public health is actually very closely linked to anti-poverty, and we need to be putting these thinking strands together so that we're linking our work on anti-poverty with economic development and with improving health. Because if we can do that, we can hit a sweet spot where we tackle low-wage economy, we tackle poor health, and we give the city a better future built on what we can do here in the city. So I just think we've got a bit of a moment of time at the moment now that we can grab to do something about this. And I know when I talk to women on the doorsteps in my ward, what I quite often see are resilient women who are being stretched to the absolute limit as they try and support their children and families, from a base of working in low-income jobs. And I think we need to be supporting those women in Plymouth, because they deserve a better life. And this gives us an opportunity, I think, to do exactly that. And I think we need to feed this into the work we're doing on anti-poverty and vice versa.
Grant, thanks very much. Any other comments or questions? Comprehensive report, Ruth. I mean, going back to the Thrive thing, I mean, I'm just reflecting on the fact that when we started out with Thrive, these numbers were different. I mean, men's health was particularly different, and those statistics sort of back that out. So it's been interesting to see certain aspects of it have improved, whilst others have seemingly gone backwards. And we probably need to do a bit of reflecting on that when we come back with the Thrive plan. So if I put the recommendations to you, this is obviously we note the contents of the report, and I think your point about austerity was quite revealing, actually, to be honest. I mean, that flatlining graph that you showed us was particularly concerning, and in a context of no headroom in the NHS, it's particularly important that we get back to preventative medicine, as it were, I think. And again, the rise of mental health that you've reflected in this report as well as being a concern, which, goes alongside a reduction in access to mental health services and basic mental health services. So I'm going to ask the question, did anybody want to say anything? And nobody said, and they all said no. Mark and Sue now have changed their minds.
I have indeed. I have indeed. It's a reflection on what Ruth was saying about not altogether quite sure as to why some of this is taking place. And obviously we've already discussed today the provision of a community diagnostic unit and the provision of 300,000 people being out, 300,000 clinical tests being done a year as a consequence. I wonder if there is a correlation between us getting a poor health offer in this city and back to Councillor Pemberley's point about women not accessing that health, and whether that exists elsewhere, and therefore could we make some comparisons from that starting point. And hopefully the provision of the new community diagnostic centre might help.
Give that a go, Ruth.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. I mean, that is a really valid point. It's difficult to get statistics and information to really correlate some of those factors around, access to GPs and things like that. And certainly, we certainly have some challenges, as you know, with our local NHS, but there are many challenges across the country as well. So we can certainly add some of those factors into the things that we look at when we do those comparisons. Yes.
Suda.
I just wanted to make a comment on reflection again. So on page 29 where it says 4.4 physical activity, there's a whole Active to Thrive plan underneath that. And it just made me realise that when we were talking about things earlier, just how we all have such a responsibility for everybody's health in Plymouth. It's got active for health, active communities, active environments, active facilities, travel and children. So Mark's Councillor Coker's award that you were talking about earlier, Mark, it sort of covers off active travel, active children, active environment, active for health, all in. So that's 4 of the key things that fit in that wheel. And it's just made me realise that when we're looking at health, underneath this plan, there are so many other things that the council does which promotes positive health and well-being across the city that we don't even recognise. And I just wanted to make that as a comment more than anything else.
No, I think it's a fair point. Out of the shadows, we're saying out of the shadows and shine a light on it all, because it's really good work and it makes a difference. And what you wonder is what we'd really like if we weren't making that intervention, how much worse things would be. So, yeah. So, Ruth, thank you, and thank the public health team. Also suffering from the austerity. And thank you very much indeed for doing what you're doing. And we'll see you in March with the new plan. Can I ask you all is in favour of the 2 recommendations, please? Everybody? Yeah, all agreed. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, well, that's good. We've done that, although a very worrying development, I think we'll all agree. I'm going to move now to item 11, which is the Finance Monitoring Report, pages 33 to 42. And I invite Councillor Lowry and David Northey to present the reports.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to start off by saying thank you to David Norby, who's our Head of Finance. David was due to retire and disappear off into the sunset and do weird and wonderful things, but he has been persuaded and chosen to stay with us for a further period of time to help us get through the budget and the finances this year. So I'd just like to record on behalf of the Cabinet our considerable thanks for his postponement of his retirement. So thank you, David. In respect of the report, I'm tempted to say it's not my fault, Gov, because you'll be aware, Cabinet, that this is a budget that was set by the previous Conservative administration that we now have the pleasure of delivering. And what you have before you is the first 3 months of that budget this year. So it's April, May, June. And we are reporting a revenue net forecast overspend of £7.5 million for the full financial year. So obviously we've still got 9 months to go. This is not a black hole in the budget. This is forecasting what would happen if the world stopped revolving today, and that's where we would be. But obviously there's a lot of work still to be done, which of course we will do, and as is a requirement of this council, we will have to provide a balanced budget at the end of the financial year, which I'm sure we will achieve. I would like to pick out a few areas of concern. Firstly, once again, not my fault, but disappointingly, we have found that from the last Conservative administration that forecast unachievable savings to the Customer and Corporate Services Department to the tune of £1.5 million from the previous year is not deliverable. So we set up a workshop with officers and myself and relevant Cabinet members to understand these issues. And of course, I will report the findings and the long-term mitigation actions to address that. Within our Children's Services Department, there's a pressure of £2.8 million. There's also a pressure of £852,000 for home to school projections, which reflects the impact of additional routes and the increased number of children requiring transport to school. Once again, there is a peer review being undertaken, and once that's been done, myself and David will be considering the findings of the department and will report to you again on what's being done. There is £1.3 million reflecting 4 new high-cost placements, so that's a considerable burden for the Children's Services Department, plus £600,000 to cover a pending special guardianship order judicial review. The Chief Executive, along with the Children's Services Transition Board, are reviewing these finances and the issues within the department to do their very best to achieve a preferable financial outcome. Additionally, we're also seeing some net pressures in care packages covering both cost and additional demand. This is mainly in the area of long stay nursing cost across that department. And as has already been mentioned today, Community Connections, which is responsible for dealing with homelessness, is currently forecasting an overspend of £2.423 million. This is a considerable increase in cost on the budget. And once again, we are setting up a number of reviews to understand exactly what's happening. I mean, this is a pressure that's existing across the country. It's not only unique to Plymouth, but nevertheless, it needs to be addressed in a cost-effective manner, and I will be working with Councillor Penberby and officers to do exactly that. As I've said, this is not a black hole. This is a forecast to the end of the financial year, and we will be working hard to make sure that we have a balanced position at the end of March next year. So that's the revenue budget. Moving on to the capital projects. They are listed in the report. Most importantly, you'll look to table 2, which you will see the breakdown of new proposed projects. And you will see the first one of which is Theatre Road Car Park Solar Scheme. There are a number of other significant projects there. Phase 1 biodiversity projects for Derriford Community Park, Central Park improvements, Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest, annual highway project to the tune of £3.7 million, tennis court improvements, Derriford District Centre, and the local authority housing fund to the tune of £1.5 million. All those projects will cost somewhere in the region of £7.5 million and are included for your approval going forward. Just to put that into context, the revised budget now stands at £556 million, £722 million. So that will be the revised capital programme for the next 5 years. That will then go to full council for approval if and when Cabinet approves this report. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? I've got a question. It's a technical one. Why is it some things that have a financial variation can be done by councillors and officers, and some things have to go to council for approval? Give you an example. There's a report here on 3 by-elections, which is a variation on £80,000 from the budget. So the council budgeted for no by-elections. Now, we haven't had to go to council to seek approval to hold those by-elections, have we? But the spending's been done, and somebody was responsible for approving the spending. Yet councillors who might want to, I don't know, make a variation to something that was in the budget papers back in March are being told that they have to put those to a full council meeting. Why is that? Why do officers have the right to vary the spending and members don't?
You're looking at me, Councillor Larry. Thank you very much. Well, I'm not sure, but thank you, Leader, for throwing that question at me. So we're all aware, I hope, of the scheme of delegation, which sets out the levels at which different approvals need to go to different people. So, for instance, you referred, Councillor Larry, to the list of approvals into the capital programme, and the first one that you mentioned was for 199,000 for the solar panels because that, in the scheme of delegation, Section 151 officer has authority to approve new additions up to a total of 200,000, I can approve that one. But in the scheme of things, that then needs to go back to council because it is a change to the budget, which was approved in February. So it's to do with the levels and the scheme of delegation. In terms of your particular item, Leader, about by-elections, there is a budget for elections held within the Chief Executive's department and monitored by both Tracy and Giles. So that is an overspend rather than a new budget line. So therefore, we are reporting as officers that we had a budget for elections, because we have elections with additional costs. We're reporting the overspend. As officers, we will now work with portfolio holders to try and bring that back. I hope that makes sense.
That's very helpful. So on that basis, if we have a budget in called events in the council that we passed in March or February, and now we want to add an event to it that we weren't expecting, that could be just an overspend in the events budget then.
So in theory, you are correct, but I would put that into the context of that is not an open checkbook to spend, spend, spend. Please don't come up with a supplementary.
The reason I'm asking is because at the moment, members are being told that something that members want have to go to council for variation. We don't understand it, we don't believe it, and we want to find a way through it. Okay? I mean, it's not skin off my nose because, you know, I don't know whether anyone's noticed, but we'd probably be able to get it through council on a vote. It's just saving all the expense of doing that when actually certain things can go through without that being required and other things do. So I just wanted to establish what the rules were. So perhaps I can give you a specific after the meeting.
Leader, I'd be delighted to talk to you after the meeting, but I would remind Cabinet that there is a review of the schemes of delegations under the Constitution coming forward anyway, so there will be an opportunity to feed in your thoughts.
Okay, so we've been asked now in the time-honoured fashion to note the forecast revenue monitoring position at period 3 and to note the capital budget with the Tom Braesdale Memorial City Centre car park solar panel scheme. And it's definitely not a black hole. Did everybody hear Councillor Lowry say that? Because it's traditional to report it as a black hole, even though it's not a black hole. It's really not. It's a forecast about if you did nothing, what would it be like? And we have this every year, don't we? And every year it's reported as a black hole, even though it isn't. Anyway, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. So I am now moving swiftly on to item 12, which is City Centre Regeneration and Leadership. This is pages 43 to 56. Councillor Lowry again.
Thank you, Chair. As you well know, because we've worked together for a number of years, the city centre is an important part of the lifeblood of our city, and therefore I'm really pleased to be presenting this paper to you today. It sets out our renewed vigour to deliver a better city centre for residents, businesses and visitors. So just to put it into context, there are some 18,000 jobs employed in our city centre, and it provides an estimated GVA, which is basically sort of economic value to our city's economy, to the tune of some £700 million a year. 18,000 jobs and £700 million a year. I think in anyone's head, that's quite a bit, isn't it, really? And whilst our city centre is a major opportunity, we are all fully aware that it has some significant challenges. It's a rather large city centre for a population of its size. We all shop very differently nowadays. Many of us use the internet for shopping. We don't use the city centre degree. It used to be. Many city centres of a comparable size will have a lot more people actually living in it. We have about 1,000 people living in our city centre. It could easily accommodate somewhere in the region of between 6,000 to 8,000 people living in our city centre. So there are some significant opportunities. And we have some projects in the pipeline. You know, alone there are currently £250 million worth of projects in our pipeline, and there's a potential another £700 million worth of projects that could come forward. And those two sets of projects, if we were to deliver them, would be £1 billion investment in our city centres. So there's a great big prize to get. And we have to work a lot harder to get that prize nowadays, because sadly interest rates have gone up because of the Liz Truss debacle. So things cost a lot more to build these days than they used to in the past. But we have a track record in this city of delivering projects. The box as example, the barcode. We've converted British Home Stores into a shopping arena. We've done some work on the marketplace and so on and so forth. So we've done a lot of good work, and there's a lot more to do, and we must work a lot harder to achieve that. So what you have before you now is a new strategy and structure for doing exactly that. So we're going to set up a strategic investment and regeneration board, providing oversight of the opportunities and coordination with key government departments and agencies such as Homes England and the National Housing and Regeneration Agency. Additionally, we will have an oversight and delivery board to focus on the completion and delivery of major projects across the city centre. All too many of them have failed and not been successful when you drive them forward. And in addition, we will have a city centre programme board which will focus on the daily delivery of live projects. So there's a huge prize. We have a track record, but we need to make some further improvements. And hopefully with these structures in place, with all of us sat at various levels within that structure, pulling together the right people who've got access to government funding, will help us take these projects forward for the future. And I'm hoping Anthony Payne, in his strategic directorate role, will hopefully assist us in delivering some of these projects. So on the face of it, it might not sound very exciting. You're setting up some meetings, but actually bringing the right people to the table and showing them what we can do and we can deliver, and we've got the land available, and in some instances we've got the skill sets to assist in doing so, is really important. And I think actually by setting up these structures, and they will undoubtedly change, it's organic, but it's a good start actually, and I think it will help give people some confidence, or at least governmental departments and funders and investors some confidence that the city has got a future and we can deliver. So hopefully this will go some way to helping, and I'm sure Anthony Payne will assist us in doing exactly that, Chair. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Well, speaking of which, do you want to add anything to that? Not that you've just been handed an hospital pass.
Thank you, Leader. I've just to reinforce Mark's words, really, I think we have got a great track record of delivery in the city centre, but it's such a big space. There's so much opportunity, but equally challenge, that there's always more to go at. And that's what we will be doing over the next period of time. If you look back over the last 5 years, we've had about £300 million worth of investment in our city centre. So it proves we can do it, but I think it's getting more and more challenging and more difficult in the current environment. So hopefully the structures we're putting in place will give that added boost and opportunity to take the opportunities forward. And I think the important thing for us is you never quite know where the money's going to be coming from. And if you've got stuff ready that you can put on out of the starting blocks and you're ready to go with and take advantage of those opportunities, then that's what we should be doing. So that would be the aim of the team, and that's what we're trying to do, so that over the next 5 years there'll be another 300 million, if not more, delivered and invested in our city centre. Thank you.
So this sort of reorganises a little bit some of the structures that we've already got, so that they're more focused on delivery in the city centre, because that's where the opportunity areas are at the moment, that we need the most cunning of plans, really, I think is you're saying. And okay, anybody got any questions about that? It is more meetings, but meetings for a reason. So that's pretty good, isn't it? That's what we want. So there are two recommendations: to note the report, and then this is the scariest one, to give Mark the authority for the city centre, along with Anthony. Just you two. Through the board. All right then. Well, that's a comfort to the taxpayers. No reflection on you. It's just that, you know, it's the last time we did that, something terrible happened. So all I would say is, that was a long time ago, by the way, and it wasn't you and it wasn't you. So all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Very much. So we move on now then to item 13, which is a report on the annual report on modern slavery. Chris Penberthy and Sally Hayden will be presenting this report, I think. Yes. So over to you.
Thank you, Leader. It's about 5 years ago now that we as a council signed the Co-opted Party's Modern Slavery Charter, a charter that has been signed by councils of all colours as people agree that we need to take action to tackle slavery today. One of the things we said we would do in that charter, and in fact that charter predated legislation by several years, was that we would report annually to council, and we have done so ever since. So this is our annual report on what we've been doing. It shows the steps that the council is taking to prevent and combat modern slavery. And I'm pleased that despite the relatively low levels of modern slavery in Plymouth, we continue to proactively take steps to minimise the likelihood of it happening under our watch. Due to its very nature, slavery, and modern slavery is still slavery, is a largely hidden crime. And it's important that we're never complacent. And we will continue to uphold the principles set out in that charter that we signed 5 years ago. So each year we review and update our modern slavery statement, laying out our commitment to combating modern slavery. We highlight the work that we are undertaking in our supply chains and highlighting some of the work we're doing in the city and regionally with partners. But one of the reasons for coming every year and doing this is that tackling slavery is something that everyone needs to do, not just the council. And we can raise awareness of the issues here in the city by talking about it. So we can ask people to be vigilant, and if you have a look at the paper, you can see the signs that people need to watch out for, and report those either to us or to the police. Obviously, I'm going to ask Cabinet to agree this paper, but before I do that, I just want to, and I've just lost, just want to talk about a bill currently going through Parliament, and which has implications. And I don't want to talk about the entirety of the illegal migration bill, but the illegal migration bill has massive potential impacts on tackling slavery in this country. And I just want to make a plea from our Cabinet to the Cabinet sitting in Whitehall making decisions to review what they're doing, because if enacted, the bill would deny potentially thousands of people who are trafficked into slavery any protections at all under law. In fact, they would be treated as someone who was an illegal migrant and deported. So as a victim of crime, they're not able to fight for their case. It's being done on the basis that the modern slavery support system is being used to encourage illegal migration, but there's no evidence of that. And the clauses specifically around this and modern slavery are incompatible with our international obligations. So whilst we are doing what we can do here, and we will continue to do what we can here with our partners, and we will continue to make Plymouth as free from slavery as we can, I would ask that the government doesn't turn slaves into criminals, and takes a more compassionate approach to victims of slavery as they discuss their bill. But having said that, Leader, I recommend this paper to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anything you want to add, Sally?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Penberthy has discussed the steps which the Council is taking to prevent and combat modern slavery. As described, modern slavery remains largely a hidden crime. We are committed to continuing our work with Devon and Cornwall Police and other partners to ensure that as a city we are able to offer the appropriate support to those vulnerable individuals who have been identified as potentially being exploited in this way. Along with statutory partners, some local businesses are also supporting our efforts in taking care of those in need. For example, Lush have provided us with 20 care packages that can be offered to those in need when it has been identified that they have been a target by the way of modern slavery and are in the need of our support. We continue to take trauma-informed approach and focus across the partnership and remain the safe and well-being for our victims. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed, Sally. Members, any other questions at all or comments? Mary.
Chair, can I just ask, Councillor Penberthy has made another suggestion about the bill that's going through Parliament. Do we need to add that into we've got two reasons and recommendations there. Do we need to add something about that into that?
Chris, what do you think? Then we can add it as an additional recommendation, can't we?
Leader, it seems to me logical, and it's time restrictive, if you see what I mean, in that we need to be acting now rather than down the line somewhere. So
okay, yeah. Okay, we'll put that in as a third rec. Okay, everything else okay? Anybody want to add anything? Okay, well, in which case I'm going to put the recommendations to you, which is to note the progress and agree the updated modern slavery and third recommendation that Mary's just offered. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Great. So item 14, which is the bereavement service project update. Would you care to approach the bench? Great to see you. So yeah, so we've got Graham, we've got Sandra, and we've got Matt here, and I believe there is a video. Shall I start with you though, Sally?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over the majority of this to Graham, who is the head of bereavement service, And I believe he's bringing us the very latest drone footage of the park. So I'll hand over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much. So yes, as Councillor Hayden said, this is the latest drone footage that was taken last week of the park. So our new crematorium that will open next year, next spring. So what you'll be able to see on this footage is our park, which is 17 acres, looking absolutely starting to look fantastic to what we'll be delivering to the residents of Plymouth. You'll see from the drone footage our cafe and wake facility, the area that the Book of Remembrance room will be built, and our memorial wall. The main crematorium building that will house the ceremony rooms, our administration offices, and our latest cremators, which will be state-of-the-art and ready with different legislation changes to take us to advance to 2027. So there's 522 trees being planted before we open. So you'll see some of those on site, with a further 361 to be planted in a phased approach after we open, that will be able to be memorialised by families. There's 3 electric car charging points, and the project has already been shortlisted for awards already, and we haven't even opened it yet. So let's have a look at the footage.
Chair, just before I bring Graham back, I have to say I'm very, very excited for this project. It is going to be absolutely fantastic. And as Graham's already mentioned about the awards that we have won and been shortlisted for. I know Tracy yourself has been out just recently. I would encourage any councillors, especially my cabinet colleagues, if you've not been, please go out and have a look. There's lots more to come, but what we wanted to do was just to give you a little bit of the feeling of showing you the growth of how it's coming along, and then we can keep bringing it back to show people as well. And this is just not exclusive for Cabinet today. When the footage is done, it's put on all our social media, all our comms, and it's shared, really well on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. And we've had really good feedback as well. But I know Graham might want to offer some other questions.
Thank you. So yes, this is all about if you wish to come out and visit site. I know some of you already have, but you will see from that drone footage how fast it is now changing. Just about 9 months before we open. So it will change very quick now, and we are very passionate about this being the customer experience, about what we're going to deliver. And I know customer is a really difficult word to use.
when you're going through a bereavement. But this is about how we support the families with the best facility we've got and how we can personalise those services for their loved ones. So it's open really for any questions.
Thank you, Graham. Any questions at all? I mean, it's not, I mean, it's a building project, but at the heart of it is the service that we provide once the building is done. Are you happy with the way things are going at the moment, Sandra?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. It's not without its challenges, but yes, it's going very well at the moment.
So, I mean, we've had a bit of miserable weather lately, haven't we, and things like that. But once the weatherproofing's done, presumably everything starts to move at a ridiculously fast pace then.
Yes, once it's waterproof, there'll be lots of trades in there to ensure that it's completed by the end of April, which is the contract date. So they'll be falling all over themselves, I think.
And we're very confident of that date, are we?
We are at the moment, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still on target for that date.
It's all right. I'm not
really
trying to, I'm not disputing that it's not happening. I just, you know, we've waited a long time. I mean, you know what I mean? We have been thinking about this and talking about this for such a very long time. So it's really exciting to see it now happening. And from our drone footage, you know, we said it would be a regionally significant project, and that is proving to be the case, I think, isn't it? Tom?
I was just wondering whether there's anything you could add about the green credentials of the building, insulation, the tree planting that was mentioned earlier.
Obviously, cremators having cremators in aren't probably the best, you know, let's be honest, but with those new cremators, they will be 40% more efficient to what we're using at the moment at Westermill in Efford. We've got a solar array as well at the back that will give us about 20% of some of the charge back. And we are looking obviously at how we can manage the best and be more efficient with heat source pumps in the cafe as well. So we are taking, because the project has been running for quite a while and things have changed, so what we're trying to do is update it as we go along.
There's a sustainable drainage system in as well. So all the water runoff goes into swales and it then is attenuated into the ground at a later date. It also uses a biodisc for any wastewater that comes off the site. Goes through there.
Sounds pretty good. Mark?
You asked the very obvious question around timing, and I'm going to ask the very obvious question around financing and the budget.
We're still currently within the budget envelope of 29.4 million, but it's not without its challenges at the moment because there have been some increases in costs. The cremators is one in particular where we've taken the decision to add an extra amount of money to the original cost, along with an increase in inflation cost. We've also agreed to pay for some improvements to the cremators, which will allow it to be compliant with the 2027 legislation coming in. So it's already been future-proofed for another 5 years.
Matt, anything from you?
Nothing more than what has been added, really. I think, just to reiterate, yeah, we're currently on programme. One of the key programme aspirations is to ensure the building is ready for FT, who are bringing the cremators in because they want a nice long sort of programme period to get in and finish their install. So that's key to the programme, is getting the cremator space ready, and then the rest of the building will then sort of follow through. So we've taken some elements off the critical path and back on again, but now everything's now focusing on the end of April date. Yep.
I remember when our friend Tony Martin, who was chair of or portfolio holder for environment in the olden days, first opened up the crematoria for public visits, and how fascinated the public were by the behind the scenes stuff. Is there going to be an opportunity with, when you bring those cremators in, for us to have that filmed and have all of the background stuff kind of recorded so that people can see just how, incredible the technology all is.
So we already do. So both our crematoriums are already open for any visitors. That and I'm doing work with St Luke's and other groups around Plymouth and giving talks about death and about the bereavement service and what we actually offer, because people don't know what we offer, because they always think that funeral directors deliver the funeral, and actually some people have actually said we're kind of the Cinderella service that provide the service, but we're not seen. So with me going out and giving talks about the bereavement service, I'm encouraging people to come in and have that behind the scenes look. So we do that, and we will be doing that at the new site. So some of the religions like to see loved ones charged in. So part of our requirements was to have a meeting room with a glass window that goes on to the crematory, so that families can actually see that if they need to. So that will continue with the offer that we already provide.
Great. But we can film the installation, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
good.
can get that.
That's great. Any other questions? Well, we look forward to the next instalment. Come back and give us another update in due course. Sometime perhaps before Christmas, by the sounds of it, you'll be able to show us quite a bit at the rate things will be going, so that'd be fantastic. Thank you for what you're doing so far. It's like you say, it has had the gestation period of an elephant, this project, hasn't it, for one reason or another. But it's such a sensitive service that we provide. So making sure that what we've done is right, and making sure that we've consulted widely on it was really important in this instance, wasn't it? We make no apologies for doing that and for having that aspiration. And thank you for coming in today and presenting as well. Good luck with the rest of it. Okay, so I think all we've got to do is note the report and applaud the video, I think it says here, something like that. Is that okay? So thank you very much indeed. And that would appear to be the end of the meeting. We intend to be back in a few weeks' time with another one. And see you then.
Thank you.